to order. If you would please call the roll.
Mayor Cunningham.
Here.
Vice Mayor Roman.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Wright.
Here. Everyone's present. Well, before we get started, I just want to say thanks to everyone for coming out and wanting to hear what we're going to discuss tonight. It's going to be very vital to the future of this city, and I'm excited about it. And I just welcome everyone here. I wish we had enough seats. I wish it was this way every BOC meeting. But anyway, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. If you've got something you'd like to say, we do have a parent's card. I would appreciate it if you fill one out. If you think you want to speak, go ahead and fill it out now. You can always decline later. And with that, we're going to move on into the discussion phase. And I've kind of got a consensus from the commissioners that we're going to flip-flop items 1 and 2. And we're going to start with the discussion of the Lakeland Fire Department. We do have the Shelby County Fire Chief, Chief Alvin Benson, is here. He's standing in the back. So if there's any questions that arise as we discuss the fire department's future, he is here to let us know how he looks at things. So with that, do I have a motion to bring the discussion to the floor? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, a motion by Vice Mayor Roman and a second by Commissioner Gonzalez. The floor is open for discussion.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, my name is next to this discussion. I asked to bring it forward because I had a conversation. I reached out to former city attorney Chris Patterson, and I asked him, I said, with everything that we're up against, as far as timing-wise, would it be possible to look at getting an extension? He said, I don't know, I'll check and see if they're maybe favorable. He sent back and said, well, why don't you see if you can try to make that official if that's what you want to do. So I'm here tonight to, I know this is a discussion-only meeting, but I want to bring it forward to ask the city manager to proceed with looking at an extension on the July 1st date for the fire department.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Anybody else on the commission have any comments or like to contribute?
I really believe we need to consider eliminating it now so we can move on with the school. Our fire service isn't broken, and I sincerely believe that it's just a stumbling block right now with bigger things. So the next couple of meetings, we could consider making it go away.
Thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. I'll just throw my 2 cents worth in here too. This has been one of the topics and initiatives for the future of the city. I believe we have so much more pressing issues that demand the dollars that it would take to do this particular initiative. I would absolutely support, if it just an extension is fine, but I would like to also see that we possibly rescind the resolution to start the Lakeland Fire Department until a future date when we can decide that it is in the best interest of us financially. I believe it's pretty obvious that the major expenditure we're looking at sometime in the next few years is the high school, and I would like to see us commit our financial support to that initiative versus the other. We have great fire service as it exists now. I don't see any reason to change that. And with that, I just think the board should consider rescinding the resolution to start the fire department right now. And that takes the pressure off of the city financially and all of us 5 sitting up here making decisions, because I believe in my heart of hearts that the school is absolutely much more important than the fire department is. And I'm willing to sit here tonight and say that I believe we should defer that until a future date to be determined when it makes sense financially. So that's what I have to say about it. Was there anyone that had a card? All of those are for us. Anyone else like to contribute?
So am I clear that you would like to have the extension until we decide, or are you wanting to just go ahead and put it on the table to dismiss the idea? What direction do you think we need to go with this so that we can bring a resolution forward next full meeting to vote on? Would it be the extension, or would it be just to completely table it, or would we put it to a discussion during work session and then decide which way we want to go. Since we do have other things to consider with our dollars.
I'm leaning towards deferring indefinitely, putting a resolution to rescind the actual starting of the fire department for right now, because as we all know that that would definitely take the pressure off of all of us sitting here to make a wise choice for every citizen and every taxpayer in this city. So that's what I would be leaning for. If we would like to bring this back up at the work session in February, I'd be happy to bring it up and let's discuss it. If we need to talk numbers, if we need to talk services, I'm confident that Chief Benson would come back if he has anything or we needed anything from him. So that would be my recommendation, is that we just defer indefinitely for right now. As I mentioned, we just need to focus on what's important, and I believe the school is much more important than the fire station right now.
I can certainly do a resolution with option A, just as you explained, or option B, a 6-month extension, and then that could be discussed, or obviously I could go one way or another, and you could amend the resolution at the full board meeting at that time, so whatever is board.
I'd like to move towards a formal extension if it's possible. That way it gives us time to make a decision one way or the other.
Any further discussion?
I was thinking since Chief is here, if you want to say anything.
Chief, would you like to just make a brief statement?
Sure. Why not? He's in the fat here. Mayor's Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, certainly glad to be here. Obviously, this has been a process we've been following a long time. And starting the fire department, I've been in business 32 years plus, and more than 10 years as a chief of a department. And so I learned how the sausage is made in the back, unfortunately. So it's a big process. The city of Lakeland was interested in starting the fire department. Obviously, we provided that service for a long time. Our men and women really love providing the service. Love the city, just like it's ours. The only thing I can say is that the extension, I think, certainly gives us time to shake some things up. But I will say this, we have intentionally delayed having a fire class, for example. Kind of looking at this and waiting on the city of Lakeland to decide if they want a fire department or not. Because obviously, if you had a fire department, we would not need as many staff as we would typically need. So I was attrition some of those folks. So I guess even the decision to delay impacts us in some way. Obviously, family and neighbors, we're going to work with that, but we would encourage you to move one way or the other. Certainly would help us because it impacts whether or not we promotion, whether or not we hire. So those are some of the things. Layered process starting fire department. Very complicated, and it is not an easy task. And I'll also say, since I'm here, that having one fire station, one fire truck does not make a fire department. Quite frankly, it's two. It really takes 3 fire stations to be a self-sustained fire department. Because if you have one fire station, one fire truck, if that truck is tied up somewhere else, one, you don't have it. If you have an incident, you're going to need at least 2, maybe 3 fire trucks, a piece of fire equipment, and all the associated manpower to mitigate any incident that may happen. So that's just the first process, one station. We build from there, and that's just not just me saying it. That is the industry standard. That is the thing that fire chiefs all across the country, and probably across the world, associated with all of them. So it's a very difficult process, and understand and respect this body's decision, but it is a difficult and very complicated process. But we enjoy doing it. We do it. We like to take it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, before we get to the next item, I've had some complaints from people here, so I'm not a moderator, so I don't know if they're saying it's not loud enough.
Hopefully that's better. I know the folks outside the windows probably can't hear, but that's okay. All right, any further discussion on item 2, which was moved to item 1? I'll go ahead and do I have a motion to close the discussion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you so much. Let's move on now to discussion item 2, which is the discussion on school funding and presentation. I'm sorry. Madam Recorder, would you please read the discussion item?
Discussion on school funding and presentation of finance.
Do I have a motion to bring this to the floor?
So moved.
Second.
All right, have a motion by Commissioner Wright and second by Commissioner Gonzalez. This discussion is officially on the floor, and I would invite Vice Mayor Roman to lead off on this.
The lights go down. So this is meant to be a discussion on financing and numbers, so you're expecting a very charismatic presentation. You're probably in the wrong room. So basically, we've got about 20 slides here to go through the different options as the way I see it. Keep in mind, this is my opinion and the way I see numbers and the way I see our situation. So, started with $35 million as the number for this presentation. That's very important because the school board had a meeting on, it was a Monday, and they gave us an idea of what it would be, and it was a $35 to $40 million. So I am using $35 million for this presentation. I went ahead and put a little bit of my resume up there so you can kind of see where I was coming from with these numbers. I'm not recent to Lakeland. My wife and I and my family have been here for a long time. This is our 3rd home in Lakeland. I started volunteering with the city of Lakeland in 2005 and really haven't stopped. I've either been on the EDC or the BOC for the whole entire time. You see my background is in financial planning, is in finance. The staff has very capable hands on staff here, so they can check everything that I came up with. But regardless, I put down there a little bit of my financial education, what I do for a living. But the very bottom in the city of Lakeland, it was something that kind of made me stood out from everybody else, and that was that I mailed a political attack campaign postcard in 2015. It's been about 4 years since I first started politics, but when I got into politics, I just felt like that was how this thing worked. You put yourself out there, and if there was something that you wanted to identify about your opponent, you did it. And so since then, whether it was public data or not, that's kind of made mortal enemies with some people. And I just want to ask you guys regardless of how you feel about me, I just went through the numbers on behalf of everybody. So don't make the kids suffer that you dislike me. And again, I apologize for the 20th time. If I had a chance to figure out how I was going to do this political road and political card, I probably would have done it a little bit differently. But regardless, let's go through the numbers. So data and fact variables. So there's a couple of different things that we know to be true when it comes to figuring out this equation. The whole idea that we're here, the 5 of us, regardless of where you sit on the aisle, it's to figure out how to get this done and how to get it done without a tax increase and how to do it in the best way possible. So we've got to start with some variables that we know, and then we have this discussion and figure out how do we make up the difference, right? So the biggest variable that we know is that what we're currently paying. You see it on the board there, $2.2 million and some change. We know that based on the data that I've received, using a 30-year bond, we're still at less than 4% interest rate, and it puts us at $2,968,145. Again, that's a fact that's not disputable. Of course, we could go to market, and it could be slightly different, but as of everything we know now, that is the number. So the difference, what we are here to discuss, is $754,995. That is the annual amount that affects the city budget. It's not the $35 million, the $52 million, whatever you want to say, because that number, Shane Ford, is on the balance sheet. I just want to talk slightly about the balance sheet. The balance sheet is a snapshot. It basically shows you how much income, not income, shows you how much liability you have. It shows you what your assets are. You can't, in my opinion, make a decision on a new investment by only looking at the balance sheet. Because if you add anything to that balance sheet, it's going to look worse, right? Because $1 more, regardless of its effectiveness, If you work for FedEx and you're deciding to buy a new plane, you know, this new plane isn't going to deliver more packages, it's just time to replace it or time to upgrade. So it just adds it on top of the balance sheet. So they're definitely not using the balance sheet when they go to make their decision. They're trying to decide how does it fit in the overall income. So if we're going to discuss affordability tonight, I suggest that we move the conversation from the balance sheet and debt over to the budget statement and deciding whether or not the payment for that can actually fit into our budget. So here we go. The budget statement, it basically contrasts and compare the actual performance of money. So it's money in and it's money out. And we know what the gap is. It's $754,995. And if within our budget statement we can find that, that money, then again, no tax increase is needed. The budget statement allows the answer to be yes. It fits in there, no problem, no tax increases is needed. But the budget statement also allows the answer to be yes, but. Yes, what? What would you add to the income statement or budget statement to allow for more of a payment? You would have to have more income. So the answer is either yes or yes with more income. So we know now that the payment gap is $754,995 now. That's if we do it today. If we wait a year from now, 2 years from now, we can have that conversation all day long, but there's some things that we know, and that is how much the gap is now. The Lakeland Board of Education has expressed their willingness to cover this for the first 4 years. That's huge. 4 years, no tax increase, conversation's over. Lakeland Board of Education has covered that for the next 4 years. This assumes locking in construction costs now, interest rates, cost, everything is locked in now. So regardless of where your timing is, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 5 years from now, I'm sure you'd much rather deal with 2019 numbers. But regardless, let's move on. But I said the Board of Education will cover it for 4 years, right? So that leaves us, we need to have the conversation now about what happens in year 5. If we don't have the conversation now, that would be what? Irresponsible, right? So if we as a city can cover the amount from current operations, then obviously no tax increase is needed in year 5 either. So this assumes that we're using the 30-year bond and we know exactly how much our obligation will be. So we can go ahead and start planning now for what year 5 looks like. So regardless of where you fall in this decision, like I said earlier, most people believe that in year 5 we will need a high school. So this gap of we'll call it $55,000 will most likely be a bargain in 5 years based on, again, increased construction costs, increased interest rates, increased costs in general. So let's talk about how we fund the gap in year 5. Where do we get $755,000 from? As I mentioned in the December meeting, I think that we should take a look at paying off some of our current debt. So throwing out facts and data, our fund balance is currently projected to end the year around $7.4 million without the expenditure for Lakeland Fire Department. We do have a reserve policy that was passed in 2016 or 2017. And actually until 2016 or 2017, the city of Lakeland had no debt policy and no reserve policy. So this was something that was done from the BOC level to maintain conservative fiscal management. So that means if we take a look and we subtract the two, that policy calls for $3.7 million roughly to stay on hand at all times. So that means $3.7 million is available for use. So let me say that differently. We've got $7.4 million. About half of that has to stay on the books. It needs to stay on the books just for the strength of the city, for ratings, for just a lot of reasons, right? Just for all of us to feel that we have a strong city. However, that means through conservative fiscal management, through saving, through revenues, outweighing expenditures, we now have $3.7 million roughly that we can invest back into the city any way that we would like. And so what I'm suggesting, one of the ways we use to invest that money is to actually pay down debt. Let me make sure I ran the, all right, so So debt payoff results, again, told you this wasn't flashy, but it's information we need to know. How much would $3.7 million free up in annual income? So the idea is if we pay off a debt, there's a payment that's associated with that debt, and how much payment would come in exchange for what we pay off. So you'll notice, you can read it from the board here, SES is how much we owe on the elementary school. Then we've got two other bonds here and notes, and you'll notice the accompanying payment that goes along with them. I originally discounted all of these in the left-hand column based on where we would be in year 5, 4 years from now. So if you take the payment, so we roughly owe somewhere around $440,000 on the top line, but in year 5, we've made that payment for 4 years, so I've discounted. The second line, we currently actually owe almost $1.2 million on that line, but we're looking at year 5. So I've discounted it down to where I would expect it to be in year 5. And in the fourth line, this is very interesting. This is actually a project that's ongoing, and we have not drawn the whole thing down yet. And so the $108,000 that you see there next to it has an I. That I means that we are paying interest only. So that means at some point, a larger payment will be associated with that dollar amount. But as of now, if we pay it off, we're only paying $108,000 in our current budget for that obligation. So that's the amount that I used. So if we take a look at all of that, we pay that off, it would still leave about a little bit over $5 million in reserves, and it would save annual payments of $417,654. Wow. So we basically were conservative, paid off debt, and we found money that we were spending on credit card payments, right? Now we have done something else. So guess what? Unfortunately, the $417,000, although it's a lot of money, it did not cover the entire gap. So we've got to keep looking. But if we did cover it with that gap, that would be painless and easy, and we can all walk away and probably say, yeah, we could probably forgive each other and move on, right? But there's a little bit more money to find. So $755,000, the initial gap, minus the $400, we'll call it $18,000. We still have a gap of $341. Again, if this amount could be found in our budget, we would need no tax increase. I will tell you though that I did run this presentation to Kyle, and in full disclosure, he had a comment on this particular slide that I wanted to make sure was read. So reply from Kyle Wright. I put Kevin right. Anyway, Kyle Wright. Local option sales tax cannot exceed 2.75% per Tennessee code. Lakeland has been charging 2.75% sales tax since 10/12. According to the Tennessee Department of Revenue, additionally, there would be no additional fund balance from which we could make budget adjustments. If we use the fund balance to pay off debt, the city would likely have to decrease services to residents. I obviously take reservation with this comment, but I wanted to make sure that the comment was out there. I'm trying to be in full disclosure, everything I possibly can, because I believe it's not only doable, it's our responsibility at this point to take advantage of it. But I take reservation with this comment because I would have said something to the nature of Lakeland will need to decrease services if we can't live within our budget or risk having to make changes to the reserve policy if an unforeseen need for cash is needed and we can't get a short-term loan or other needs of financing. So I bring this up to say that we always jump to the worst-case scenario, whether it's online, whether it's, regardless of what it is. I'm just using that as one example. What I'm saying is that it's never, in my opinion, bad to pay off debt, especially if you've still got over $5 million in reserves. So I did want to throw out the other side of that argument there. So looking at revenue projections, again, how much are we looking for? Roughly $337,000, right? So $366,466. So it is difficult to project sales tax or property tax that far in the future, but let's take a look at some things that we feel very comfortable are coming down the pipe. We've got Lakeland Commons. It's projected to be $200,000 plus. And again, we're looking at year 5, right? Because the first 4 years are covered, right? So in year 5, we've got Lakeland Commons, $200,000 plus. Roughly 35, 40 homes a year is well within doable. So we've got 150 new homes. That's $180,000 of additional income and revenue for the city. The Lake District, it's a $3 million a year project, so we're expecting it in the next 5 years to be 8% done. I think that's a pretty conservative number, but there's $200,000. And then lastly, in the December meeting, the mayor mentioned that there was some blow your mind stuff in the works. And I'm familiar with the blow your mind stuff, and I agree. And I believe that would be $300,000. I believe that would be $300,000. Not conservatively, I know exactly what it is. That's probably about what it will be in 5 years. So regardless, if none of this happens, we would be irresponsible to not look at what other options do we have, right? Because even though, you know, modern portfolio theory teaches us about systematic and unsystematic risk, you know, any one of these variables either one of these projects could have something that happen to them and they're knocked off, right? That's something specific, a specific risk. Systematic risk would be if something happened to all 4 of these at the same time. And we know that the more different types of projects you have, the risk actually goes down because more things have to go wrong, right? So regardless, we'll say we had some sort of systematic issue and none of these were able to happen, although I believe that is very, very unlikely to happen. So regardless, again, if 1 or 2 of these projects actually happen, 1 or 2 of these projects do a little bit better than expected, again, no tax increase is needed, and we all, you know, are off to the races. However, we again have to look at what happens if all 4 of these projects for some reason fall flat on their face. And what we're looking at now is the roads budget. So the roads budget, if you take a look at it, it's hard to see, but that's only going back to 2007. If you take a look at the very first line, it says $200,000. So it goes from $200,000 all the way up to $1.1 million. So the first year it broke $200,000 was 2008, but then you'll notice that it had a problem just breaking $30,000 to $40,000 for the next 7 years. So if you know Lakeland's history, we have to, in full disclosure, say this was the time that Lakeland didn't have a property tax. So we were forced 100% on retail sales, and the people that were sitting in these chairs before basically could just only work with what they had. So what happened in 2013, there was an 85-cent property tax that was initiated. This was the first property tax ever in the city of Lakeland. It just happened to coincide with the schools. The schools got less than 25 cents of that. The remaining part went to the city of Lakeland. And you'll notice that, aptly so, they put a large percentage of it into roads and got that budget up to over $100,000, knocking on $200,000. Something else happened in 2015. 2015 was the year that the tax was implemented in order to fund the high school, the Lakeland Prep Middle School High School project. You notice, everyone in this room knows that the bond failed. However, the tax remained the same in anticipation for the day that could be afforded on that tax. The day is here. But regardless, what happened with that money in the past? What happened with that money in the past is that it all went to roads. There was a lot of deferred maintenance, so no one complained about still paying taxes because you could see roads happening all day long. 2018 is not on there, but it was well over $1 million as well. So all of that money went back into the roads. So with that in mind, if we were looking for $336,000, where would we find it? I would tell you that the reason why that money is there in the first place is for schools. So if we took the whole $360,000 out of there from $1 million, let's just call it an average of $800,000, you're still at least 200 to 300% of our historic amount that we had in that roads budget. So again, we have an answer for where we would get that money. We can all leave here as friends, shake hands and say, awesome, we did a good job, right? But today, why is this issue not resolved? I mean, the cash flow numbers clearly show you that we do not need a tax increase if we use a 30-year bond. I have found at least 3 different ways to get the money. So my question is, are we truly open to an answer? Do you really have it within us to come together and say yes? I would love it if we could end this conflict tonight and then we could move forward and heal the city. However, the presentation is only halfway done. The budget statement, like I said at the beginning, allows for yes and yes, but more money. So let's keep going, because there's a couple different options. So another option is the budget statement allows for, obviously, an answered yes, a 30-year bond with no tax increase. And it also allows for a yes, which means we can afford it with a tax increase. One benefit to this option is that the debt is paid off sooner. It's a more conservative pay-as-you-go method, similar to the sewer project that we're currently doing, that staff has fought for to pay over a short period of time, similar to what the middle school project is. Lakeland has a history of using short-term debt, and it would make sense to do it in this case as well if you wanted to make sure that you had the ability to pay for other capital projects down the road. You would want to pay off this as fast as you possibly can, and I can understand why some of you may choose that route. So the good news is that this route is affordable, but it does require sacrifice by all of us. Next slide. So, a capital outlay note. As we know, a capital outlay note would equal new money, means that whatever we currently have in the city budget would have to be increased to pay for a new capital outlay note. Currently, if we, and again, I got all these numbers verified today, we would have to go to market, it could possibly change, but as of today, this is what my best guess or my best estimates are that have been verified. If we decided we did not want to have the option to refinance this, the lowest, lock it in for 12 years the same way, same way you would any other 12-year note, it would be roughly $3,446,750. I should quit saying the word dollars, just wait to the very end and say dollars, right? So $3,446,750 on a regular call, $3.8 million of new money if we wanted it immediately callable. Why would we want it immediately callable? Immediately callable would mean that if for some reason the board changed their mind and wanted to refinance it, if for some reason we wanted to be flexible and refinance it, those options would be there. So because that is the most expensive option, that's the option I'm going to use so that we can all know what worst case scenario looks like. So this is very aggressive, but it is an option. Each penny, if you think about it, each penny of taxes that you pay to the city equals about $35,343 for each penny of revenue. That means we need to find about 110 pennies to cover $3.8 million. So let's take a look at where do we get $3.8 million and where do we get 110 pennies from. The first thing is we don't have to worry about 20 cents of that for the next 4 years because the Board of Education has already said they would help us out. So there goes, again, that's not been voted on, but they talked about it, so I'm going with it. All right, so for the next 4 years, worst case scenario for us before we look at anything else is roughly 90 pennies. That would be 90-cent tax increase. When you take a look at the debt payoff that I mentioned in option 1, generates $417,000. That's still an option. That $417,000 generates another roughly, is that 12 pennies? There we go. Next option is we would, that same money that we had an opportunity to take out of roads that caused no tax increase, we can still take that money out of roads and that would save us another 10 pennies. And then City Hall, like I said, sacrificed by all. We could make cuts at City Hall and that would be another 10 cents. So now we're down to 58 cents. So option 2 is a yes, but it comes with a 58-cent tax increase. Our new tax rate in the city of Lakeland would be $1.83. Now keep in mind, that is worst case scenario. We could decide we want to do the 12-year lock it in, be done with it, pay it off. That would save us roughly 13 cents on the tax rate, and it would be $45.70, right? So you'll see here at the very bottom is how I got those numbers of how much it would cost for the tax increase. So let's take a look at it. The next slide, please. What does that tax rate look like compared to our peers? Right now, $1.25 is pretty attractive when it comes to the whole region. If you take a look at it, with the exception of Arlington, everybody else is well over $1.50. And you'll notice that even if we went to worst case scenario, $1.83, you'll notice there's two folks that are right there with us. So the regular call is at $1.70, which still keeps us lower than our main competitors that we feel like Bartlett, Carterville, Arlington. So I'm going to read this from the screen because I went on Zillow and tried to get an idea of how this would impact the median home value or the median homeowner in the city of Lakeland. So I'm just going to read it off my notes. Based on Zillow, the median home in Lakeland is $253,400. The City Data website has it slightly higher, but I'll use $253,400. So the way we get to the assessed value is we take 25% of that. That gets us down to $63,350. That person currently pays roughly $792 a year. If the flexible capital outlay note is chosen, the highest amount, then it would increase it to $1,159.31. The difference is about $30.62 a month. But it's a flexible option, so that means at some point in time, if the BOC decided, they could refinance it to a longer term debt, and that would go right back down to $1.25. But regardless, $30.62 a month is what the median homeowner in the city of Lakeland would be looking at if we chose the capital outlay note with the most flexibility. Or we can take the lower tax rate and plan on paying it off quickly as we go. That same median home would go from $791.88 to $1,076.95, a difference of $285 or $23.76 a month. Keep in mind that this is only for the next 4 years. In year 5, that rate would go up 20 cents to replace the Board of Education funds if we do not experience growth, meaning that we can't find that $700,000 someplace else. So that brings it to $1.65 in year 5, which would add another $10.56 a month. Even at that tax rate, Lakeland is still less than Germantown and very, very similar to Bartlett or Carterville. So conclusion on all those numbers. $1.83 or $1.70 is still less than Germantown, Carterville, Bartlett, and our main competitors. However, I believe the 30-year bond is the least uncomfortable option from a city budget point of view. Literally, the 30-year bond changes very little. The capital outlay note is a great option for those of us that are conservative and would rather pay as we go. And in the past, it has been the preferred method of Lakeland to use to pay off debt. In closing, I'll ask why now? We've had the needs versus want, and I hope that tonight in this presentation I've showed you that we can go ahead and lock in the affordability. We got a great offer from the school board. You know, that for the way the school board has worked, the city asked for to wait 4 years to get a capital project funded, and then come back and say, hey, we're so committed to this that we're willing to give some of our own budget. Is something that we may take for granted because some of us know how passionate we are, but that's something that in other cities they would just drop their jaw like, what, they're gonna. But yes, so that's something that we have to understand, that that's a dynamic of today, and that offer will not always be on the table. So we have a great offer from the school board. But third thing is we can go ahead and experience the benefits now. What benefits do you talk about? The increased marketability of the homes in Lakeland, the increased marketability of the businesses in Lakeland. We can go ahead and capture Shelby County Schools capital improvement project funds. Did anybody see in the newspaper where they had just issued over $100 million in bonds or right at $1 million in bonds? They talked about doing like a $300 million. Well, we capture a percentage of that based on how many students are actually in our school system. So that will allow us to go ahead and capture our, what I would say, fair share. But what's most important to me is the vote and voice in our kids' education. We will be allowed to go ahead and do that now. And lastly, shore up city infrastructure. So there may come a time with interest rates, there may come a time with cost that it's just not affordable. And we have a responsibility now that we know that it's doable to go ahead and lock it in and make sure that our city doesn't rely on anybody else. This conversation is not about another city. It's not about anybody else. It's about what can we do for the city of Lakeland to bolster us to where we compete against everybody else in the marketplace. And then lastly, we would end the divide. We can do it relatively quickly. We can do it relatively without much pain. And we can just basically move on. So, regardless, that is my presentation for tonight, and I open it for discussion.
Thank you, Josh. Sorry. Thank you, Josh. Any other commissioners who want to speak? I'd like to go ahead and open the floor for the mayor's
I'm fine with letting them.
Yeah, I think we should go with that first because we've got a hard stop at 6:30. So anyway, I hate calling Amy first every time. It's just the cards on top. So I'm gonna shuffle your card down one. Okay? How about Miss Katie Autry?
Katie Autry, 10360 Herons Ridge Cove. On this pin is a photo of my son. He's a 7th grader at LMPS. Next year will be his last year as a student in the Lakeland school system. My son and my 2 other sons play football. They want to play for the school that they attend. They are Lakeland boys. If our city fails to build a high school, all of the Lakeland athletes will be at a distinct disadvantage when they sign up to play athletics at Arlington. Number 1, too many children will vie for positions. Only so many will get to have playtime. That's not fair. Number 2, the Arlington coaches will likely choose to play the children they already know or who have played for Arlington most of their lives. Our Lakeland athletes may be perceived as the outsiders or the redheaded stepchildren. How's that fair? How do you explain this to a child who has hopes and dreams? These are the youth of today, and they deserve to have the same and equal opportunities as anyone else. With at least 4 new subdivisions going up, the Lake District going up, and families moving here for all the wonderful reasons that we live here, it makes total sense to complete the school system. In 2015, we had the money to build both schools. We completed the middle school under budget. Where's the high school? What happened? How did Lakeland lose a bond that would have built the high school? Perhaps the ones responsible for that should come to LMPS, come to the cafeteria, pick up the microphone. Look those children in their eyes and tell them why they are not deserving of a school. Tell them why they are expendable. Nobody lives forever. We take our life stories to our graves, and every human being will stand in judgment on their day. What we leave behind are our legacies. You can't put a price on that, or can you? Thank you.
Amy?
Amy Foster, 10293 Oak Bank Cove. Alright. I'm a supporter of the high school. I've emailed you all my reasons why. Our school website says Lakeland K-12. Our teachers and our students' email says Lakeland K-12. It's time for our city to make Lakeland K-12. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Ms. Linda Miller?
Linda Miller, 3217 Sea Ray Lane. This is not about the schools, because I wasn't sure how to put what was under the agenda. What I was speaking about is, I'm embarrassed, as you should be, Ms. Donald and Mr. Roman, for your behavior at the last BOC meeting. I'm embarrassed because I'm a former educator for 35 years in Nashville. And for you to say, well, I'm an educator, you don't act like an educator. You're not professional. you sit there and storm out of a meeting, just appall. It just blew my mind when I saw that last week. Also, what I was gonna say is, if I have a high credit card debt, I don't keep charging and charging just because I want it. If I want a Cadillac, I've got to make sacrifices to get a Cadillac, not a Toyota. So that's what I think we have to do, is I worry about fiscal responsibility. And I think that this board, I was hoping that we would have the respect for each other. And I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing it from Mr. Roman, I'm not seeing it from Ms. Dime. Mr. Wright, I don't, questionable. But I think we've got to show respect before we can make our city be the city that we want it to be. I think that's very important. It's not being shown by this few people on our board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
I just have one question, Ms. Miller. Do you drive a silver Cadillac SRX?
Do I?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, just that's the only question I have.
I drive, yeah, what's the meaning of that?
Just curious. Thought I would mistake an apology.
No.
I have one other card. It's Mr. Randy Yarber, but he has a zoning question. Do we want to defer that till we finish up this discussion, or we want to let him go ahead and speak while we have the floor open?
I don't see zoning on the.
Yeah, I don't either, so I just read the card. It was the last one. Actually, he can, if he wants to speak at the NPC, which will be following this meeting, that's probably more appropriate for this topic anyway, so I'll hang on to this card for right now. Any other discussion from the public? Do we have any other cards? I'll open it up to us up here. Any comments from any of the commissioners? I'll close with what I have to say, if that's okay, and then we'll move to the last topic.
Just real quickly, Cal, you got something? What are we paying interest only on? Which one was that?
The TLDA drawdown loan that relates to construction on Beverly Rivera Road. It's approximately $1.7 million. I believe 1.05-ish is drawn, and that's the amount that you pay interest on. And once that project is deemed complete by TDOT, I think is the appropriate authority. Once that project is deemed complete, we will start paying principal and interest on that.
Thank you.
Real quick, I attended the meeting Monday, the school board meeting, you don't hear me okay? And they laid out several good examples why building a high school now is fiscally responsible versus waiting, because of what it has cost. Delaying it has cost us millions. I was wondering if Ted Horrell, the superintendent, could speak to that. One is building a high school now makes sense financially for Lakeland school system and the city of Lakeland. If you come up, yeah. I figured you might have something you could put out there for us, just to reiterate what you said Monday.
I've learned to always be ready at these meetings.
I appreciate it.
Sure thing. I do want to be sensitive to everybody's time constraints. I understand there's only 10 minutes left for the whole meeting.
We're good.
Is that right? Okay, I'll do my best. Part of the point I was trying to make is that the original plan, in the plan to build the combined middle and high school, had to do with the reasoning that we felt like that would be a cost-effective way to get the best bang for our educational dollar for our students. And just to clarify, I wouldn't at this point recommend that we build a standalone high school with the number of high school students that we have. I don't think that would make sense. But I do think that adding students to our existing campus makes a tremendous amount of both financial and educational sense for our school system. Now, were you talking about some of the reasons that it's more expensive now than it was, or really the reasons to do it now?
The reasons to do it now versus delaying it.
Yeah, one of those has to do with basically the school system's ability to start to set aside its own funds for future capital needs. And one of the things I pointed out, and I think everybody knows this, unfortunately, building the high school portion of the Lakeland Prep campus is not the end of the capital needs for the school system. We will, in the future, need an additional elementary school or perhaps an intermediate school we've talked about. And there are economies of scale that having a higher student-to-school ratio allow us to realize. We put a certain percentage of our budget historically into fund balance over each of the last 4 years, and it's typically been the average of about 11%. Interestingly, that's about the same as our colleagues in the other municipal school systems have been able to put away. So as the total amount of revenue is higher, you capture the opportunity for the school system to set aside additional dollars. We had a conversation today at one of our superintendent's meetings, and it was about some new data reporting that was going to be required by the state. And one of them is the per student expenditures that will soon in the near future be reported for every school. And we were talking about the challenge of making sure that parents understand why those numbers sometimes aren't the same. If your child goes to one elementary school and they see another elementary school is spending more per student, they might want to say, now wait a minute, how come my school is not spending as much per student? And one of the things we talk about is that it tends to be, if you have a higher number of students in one school, your per student spending is typically going to be much lower. And I think that makes sense to most people. There's certainly certain basic costs that as soon as those are paid for, you don't keep paying them as soon as the number of students goes up. You pay for more teachers when you get more students, but you don't necessarily hire a new principal. You know, you might pay for more textbooks, or in our case, Chromebooks, but you don't necessarily hire a new plant manager or a new librarian or some of these things. So there's an economy of scale to having more students, in a nutshell, that would allow the school system to put those funds aside. So when it's come time for our next capital expenditure, hopefully we are coming to the Board of Commissioners asking for less money because the school system has been able to put that money aside. Also, as was alluded, there is capital funding that comes from Shelby County Schools. We don't know if they will follow through on that level of funding, but we do know, and I put these numbers together, just for example, over the last 4 years, when actually there has not been a lot of Shelby County Schools allocation, the value of the high school students that Lakeland likely would have received on an average daily attendance basis is about $500,000. That's a pretty good chunk of change that you would get just by virtue of educating those students. So we feel like that it allows the school system to basically take some of the financial matters in its own hands, pack money away, and allow us to address those next level of capital needs much more efficiently. And I will say again, because I've said it many times, we also feel like, and it's the most important thing, we can offer an outstanding educational experience to those students in a combined middle and high school. Did that answer your question?
Appreciate it. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Wait, can I add to that, Tim? Is that how you figured that you can afford the $750 a year to contribute to the funding that we can make the payment from that month?
Well, the $700,000 was actually a number that came out of our existing fund balance. So we've been able to put aside about, I think it's $4.2 million over the last 4 years in our own fund balance. So we try to figure out, when we consider our own minimum requirements for fund balance, how much we could count on, and on being able to contribute, also working on the assumption that we would continue, hopefully, to put funds away each of those 4 years. So that's where that number came from. Okay.
Thank you, Ted. Anyone else? Close this out. Close the time. Vice Mayor, I appreciate you bringing in the numbers and showing them. I know a lot of people have wanted to see this for a long time, and I applaud you for doing that. I just want to add my piece to the equation, and I'm going to make a statement tonight that I don't believe anyone in here ever thought I would say, but I'm going to make a commitment tonight to what I believe is in the best interest of Lakeland as a whole and the Lakeland school system. I just want to start with one thing that you said, what can we do for the city of Lakeland? I believe that's all-inclusive Lakeland. That is every citizen from the eldest to the youngest. With that, I want to take into consideration consideration what Josh brought to us tonight, but we also have to look holistically at what the city's finances are. Last meeting, we talked about where are we going to make up a $2.3 million deficit in this budget year. I'm concerned about that. Sitting up here as lead Mike, I'm concerned about that. I don't believe that's something that's insurmountable, that we cannot overcome, that could put the plan and the proposal that I'm going to share with everyone tonight. I don't have a formal presentation. I'm working with Shane and Kyle to kind of get these numbers to make sure that I'm talking apples to apples, because I believe I have a plan that is a solution for this problem that everybody in the city can get behind. As we know, this is a very divisive subject. We need to look at, when we were looking at tax rates for our sister cities, let's look at Bartlett, Carville, and Germantown specifically. Their tax rate, especially the two at 183, include fire service in their tax. We pay that on fire fee to our light, gas, and water bill. So I want to make sure we're talking apples to apples, and we can walk and talk through this as a board when we work at a work session through this. I also want to let folks know the school is not the only expenditure that we have coming up. We are already committed to New Canada Road being finished. We've applied with the state. It's a $20 million grant. We have to come up with $5 million more. How does that play into this big equation? It's not just the school, folks, it's everything. And I'm not trying to be a naysayer here, I promise you that. The other thing that's a concern, and that it really affects the long-term ability of Lakeland, is that we need the Clear Creek Sewer Interceptor. That's an $8 million project. It's in a different fund. It's still debt to the city that we need to look at and consider how we're going to get there. And I believe we can. That totals $13 million between those two projects. If the fire department goes away, I think that lessens our burden financially, totally outflow from the city. So I want to make sure that we look at everything, that we are protecting all citizens and taxpayers, but yet we're going to look out for the kids too. So with that, what I'd like to talk about as we work through this issue of getting the school built. I've never said I was against the school. I've said that every time I've sat up here. I just want to do it, and I want to do it right. I believe in the philosophy. It's a very simple business philosophy. It's called speed, quality, or price. Pick any two, because the other will suffer. That's a business mantra I ran my car business out of. So just bear with me here. I tonight am going to put a stake in the ground. I believe that with the current con note that we have on the middle school, if we can get financially to March of 2021, where, and I know I've been corrected because I don't talk the financial jargon, but I want to speak in layman's terms, to when that penalty on that loan goes away, that gives us a little more financial strength and time to grow the city commercially like I've preached. And we all, I hope, are aware of some of the things that have been brought to us. I know Forrest is doing a fantastic job. I stopped through City Hall the other day, and he and Jim were sitting in the office. They said, "Hey, Mayor, come in here and talk to us." And they were just grinning ear to ear, and there was papers all over his office. So there's a lot of great things. The floodgates are open here. I say that because we have a lake. But anyway, with that, I will put the stake in the ground financially in March of 2021, and we minimize that penalty, so to speak. What I'd like to see us look at is to take that point and work back towards now. The school is committed $700,000 per year for 4 years from their fund balance. Let's look at taking that money and using it on the front end of the stake I put in the ground sooner than later. And let's use that for some preliminary work and all of that, and we can get all of this together in the meantime. So what I'm thinking and what I have come to the realization of is worst case. If we get to that point, financially we can be in better shape than we are right now today with the other upcoming projects. But I believe we can open Lakeland Prep in the 2022-2023 school year. My proposal. Like I said, I don't have all the nuts and bolts to that, and I'm going to work with Shane and Kyle to see what we can kind of compare the two situations we're at right now. I'm a pros and cons guy. First and foremost, let's talk about pros. The pros, it relieves that penalty. I'm not one to go to a car dealership, find a car I want and say, how much is that going to cost me a month? I want to know what the price is. I'll decide how much I want to pay a month. So that is a scenario where we can't just look at what we're spending per month on debt service and things like that. We have to look at where we are financially from a true number standpoint. Another thing this does, I've got the numbers from Mr. Horton. We talked about this the other night. I want to use his numbers. I believe in our superintendent. It will be that point that we will be at the threshold of about 900 students, which I believe, in talking to him and to Kevin both, is a great number to have in a Lakeland high school to get started. It gives us enough of the state money to where we can actually do a fantastic job for our students. What it also gives is it gives us time to work it out with Arlington. We need to sit down with Arlington Community Schools. They are our sister city. They have been taking care of our kids for the last few years. We now have time to work that out. I say, worst case on the dates, I'd love to see us be able to fast track that to 2021, to the 2022 school year. But what that does is it gives us a buffer if we're not able to grow and bring in the revenues necessary. So with that, it commercially will give us some revenues over that time. And, you know, as I said when I started off, the first and foremost thing it does, it gives us the opportunity right now, and I'm committed to doing it right, that we can look at all of those scenarios with the speed, quality, and price, and let's do it right, because I believe our kids deserve it. I don't want to do it just because. I want to do it what's in the best interest of the city, every citizen included, and our children. So I hope that what I had to say tonight will strike some people. That's surprising. I believe it's a compromise. I believe it's, if you look at all of the stuff that's gone on in the last 6 months, you have both sides of the equation. You have the people that want to build a school tomorrow. You have people that don't think we need it for 10 years, 15 years. I don't believe that anymore. I've looked and thought enough. What I do for work is I plan. I've looked at milestones and I've looked at forecasting, and I believe that threshold is doable. I believe it's doable, and it doesn't sacrifice this man sitting right here who committed his family to move here 2 months ago on a hope and prayer now that he can run a city, and we don't want him running a city that's broke. So I believe that that's in the best interest of all of us. That's just a rough draft proposal. I believe we can talk through that, and I would like to offer that up as something for people to consider. So
I'd like to comment if that's okay.
sure.
$2.3 million has been thrown around a lot as far as a budget deficit for this year. $2.3 million includes a lot of one-time expenses, mainly a $1.5 million fire department, a few surprises on ambulance, a few surprises on health, and repaving a full neighborhood. $2.3 million is not the norm. We have historically had a balanced budget, and I don't see any reason why we should be working off of a negative $2.3 million. That budget deficit included us investing money out of our reserves into the fire department that would hopefully one day, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, lower our fire fee, which got to start somewhere, right? So that was my first, with $2.3 million. The second is the sewer. We've thrown sewer around a lot. I've seen the memes out there. You know, the sewer's at 55% capacity, schools at 99. Why are we worried about the sewer? But that's all just for the argument back and forth. The truth about sewer is that we all know the truth about sewer. Your sewer fee went up. Last year we came up with a plan how to fund it. It is currently an 8-year funding, so basically based on the rate you pay now, it's a pay-as-you-go plan for the sewer. So there is a plan for sewer. We're already 1 year into it, 7 years from being finished and paid off. So again, we bring up the idea of sewers more important than schools, or we need sewers for something, I don't know. But regardless, it's not an argument that really holds water, or does it? So, regardless, New Canada Road. New Canada Road, we've never paid cash for a road since I've been with Lakeland. Over 15 years. It's an idea where we, you know, it's a project, it's a multi-year project. We usually get a loan from the state and we take out a little bit, pay for a little bit, but again, the State Street Aid Fund is an enterprise fund the same way the sewer is. And that enterprise fund is going to have at least 200 to 300% more than it's had in the last 10 years, barring 2 of those where the money was diverted from the school into the streets, right? But regardless, there's still a plan for that as well. And even if there isn't, why would the kids suffer for poor planning? This street's been planned since early 2000s. So, you know. Lastly, the idea of March 2021. Not a bad idea. I completely get where you get that from in the argument. The reason why last week I made a correction of the idea of the use of those monies. The idea was made that if we make a payment on it, that money is thrown away. Well, no, we set this money aside to make the payment. It's called into a sinking fund. So what does that do? It allows us to pay off that portion. So every dollar that we set aside isn't refinanced, right? It's just the sinking fund is financed into the total bond. It's not wasted money. So we can go ahead and plan for that now. And lastly, just to be 100% transparent, Mr. Mayor, 2021 gets us past another election. Right now, I believe we have a pro-school board, and I just can't risk it. So in my mind, the last thing I want to do is be pushy, but I feel it's an issue that has to be fixed sooner rather than later.
I appreciate the follow-up, and I'll just briefly say this. I think the divisiveness in the city is made by comments like, it's not schools versus sewers. No, folks, it's schools and sewers, and it's roads, and it's everything we have to support this man who basically took a leap of faith to come here 2 months ago. I am not going to hand him a broke city just because we can't be patient and work on something collaboratively together. That's just what I have to say about it, and I would entertain a motion to close this discussion item. Second.
I have one thing. If we wait until 2021 to begin the discussion, we are putting ourselves behind for the planning process. To be able to go ahead and start that planning process and see a school come along in 2 years to where we have to plan it in time to where it is completed in the fall so that children can enter the doors when schools begin. We're in 18-19 now. We've got 19-20 and 2021 before we even reach that 2021 threshold. We've been made to feel comfortable with the fact that all of the homes that are being built now are fine with the sewer that we have available to them to reach the threshold that Emily gave us on last Thursday night. So yes, sewers are important. Yes, streets are important. But yes, the school is important as well. And there are those of us that believe that the school coming along is going to increase the demand for businesses, that's going to increase the amount of people that want to come to our city to open businesses that we can frequent, we can raise our sales tax collections. We will be adding to our property tax collections as these houses that are already slated, the land has been cleared, they're beginning to put the infrastructure there, and that's all included in the sewer capacity that we were given last Thursday night. So if we cannot decide that we are comfortable with a 30-year loan, then we really do need to go ahead and consider the funding process so that Mr. Worrell has the ability to go ahead and begin the planning of the school building so that when we reach the time that it's needed, which I estimate more 2021 than the 2021 beginning the process of the whole, everything that has to be done prior to the school being built to prepare for it to be here. So, Mr. Horn, I would like for you to prepare for us for the next board meeting where we can have a discussion to entertain going ahead and setting the tax rate to where we will be able to afford to bring the school about, which it would not open for at least 2 years anyway, but we can get ourselves at least look at what we will be facing if we do raise the tax rate, and what citizens will be facing if the tax rate is raised. I took a little time to look at my home and my appraisal and to look at what it would end up costing me, because just because I'm not a widow, I am a single income household. So it does affect me just like it does affect other people who do not have a second income in their home. So I have to consider being able to absorb that tax increase as well. And mine came up to $20.81 a month more to get a school. And everyone that lives in Stonebridge is going to be in that same comparable rate and same comparable issue, to where they're going to need to find $20 more a month to be able to afford the increase to their escrow. I would like for you to go ahead and have that for us so that we can entertain a motion to raise the tax rate to be able to afford the capital outlay note, so that we can go ahead and begin the planning process and have that school out of the ground in the 2021 school system time, or in that period.
All right. Just to clarify, I want to clarify one thing. As you started, I'm not talking about starting the process in March of 2021. I'm saying that's when we start looking at our financial obligation as a board of commissioners. I would like, and as I spoke, we would actually back that stake in the ground up 6 to 9 months. And we would actually work off of the fund balance that the school board is willing to give us or to contribute to the school, which would actually bump us closer in time frame to where we can get all the plans and stuff done. And we don't borrow the money until we're ready to break ground and start coming out of the ground. So that, just wanted to clear that up, because I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that. I'm not saying wait until March of 2021 to start doing anything. We could actually start now and do the things that aren't costly, that don't require a lot of money, and then with the school board's commitment of their funds, let's use it on the front end, because we already have that. That's in their fund balance, it's in their savings account. So let's use that to do the front end preliminary work, to get right down to we're ready to break ground, and that's when we go after the financing. That's all I was saying. Don't want to drag this out any longer, so let's, if we have a motion to move
Yes,
on.
motion to adjourn.
Second. Can't adjourn yet.
Aye.
We have one other, sorry. We have one other item on the agenda. That's okay. I just wanted to close the discussion item. So, all in favor of closing the school discussion item? Aye. All right, any opposed? All right, the final discussion item is discussion, I'm sorry, Madam Recorder, would you please read?
Discussion on city attorney.
All right, and I'll refer to Mr. Shane. He's brought that onto the agenda, so I'll let him speak if he will.
Certainly, out of respect for time and our MPC, I'm certainly willing to defer this conversation to our February work sessions at the consensus of the board.
So basically, the idea is that we need to hire another one. Do we already have a job description ready where we can post it?
No, I'm waiting for input from the board before I proceed. So kind of I guess my initial thought was to kind of get a short list of attorneys or firms that you're interested in hearing from, breaking up to whether it's a special meeting or a work session, and you guys can ask questions at that point, and we proceed from there. But whatever you would like me to do, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, well,
I was just gonna say, if there's any way we can maybe email you names separately, then invite them to the February work session.
Yeah.
And then if they wanna come to the February work session, maybe you can maybe coach us about what we should be asking them, or how to ask them, and that way we can at least try to make some progress in the February work session instead of starting the process then.
And potentially have a sort of work description, job description, things that we can look at to determine if that's at all encompassing and how a city attorney is hired, because I wasn't on the board the last time we did that, so it's going to be new. And just give us a little direction of the things that we need to be looking for in that type of employee, so that we make sure that we're looking at all encompassing duty of that person's job.
I will formally ask the city manager to do some research on our city charter as to how that process actually works. It's just kind of a quick notice, so I'd like for Shane, if you would, to do a little research on that, and let's follow the charter as it's written, and we'll kind of take it from there and take this back up at the February work session with hopefully some names, job descriptions, and be ready to move forward as soon as we can.
When you find that, the city charter regarding that position, would you please forward it to all of us so that we can read it?
If I understand correctly, if we have names that you would like to go ahead and forward to them as well.
I'm absolutely fine with that, as long as that fits within our ability to do so. All right, do I have a motion to close this discussion item? And a second?
Second.
All opposed to closing this discussion? Aye. Do I have?
You said all opposed to
I'm
close.
sorry, all in favor.
I wasn't going to
You would think we've been here for 3.5 hours already, but no. I'm sorry, all in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Aye. And now do I have a motion that we adjourn?
I second that.
Somebody make it.
I did.
A motion made by Commissioner Dial, seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for coming and contributing to this discussion.